The room smelled faintly of vanilla frosting and candle wax. Claire was sitting at the head of the long dining table, a soft blue dress hugging her shoulders just right, her hair pulled back in loose curls we'd spent an hour perfecting. Around her, 17 classmates and one boy the boy stood waiting for her to blow out the candles. I'd planned this moment in my head for weeks. Lights dimmed, the soft rustle of guests leaning in, that little intake of breath right before the song begins. Clara's first real birthday party, the one she'd remember. I was filming on my phone, smiling so hard my cheeks ached. And then my mother's voice cut through the moment. "Careful with that cake, sweetheart. If you eat too much, that dress might not fit next year." She said it like a toast-light voice, big smile, eyes sparkling as if she'd just shared a secret. There was half a beat of silence. For a split second, I prayed no one would laugh. But the sound came anyway. A snort from Sophie, my sister. Then my father's deep chuckle, shaking his head like classic mom. A ripple of giggles spread through the table. Even Ryan, Sophie's son, grinned at his phone as if typing it out to someone. And then I saw Ethan Toll, awkward, holding a small wrapped box, give a short, nervous laugh and glance at the floor. Clara's cheeks flamed so fast I swear I felt the heat from where I stood. She pushed her chair back. The screech of the legs against the floor made the whole room flinch, and then she was gone. Just like that, the candles kept burning, no one moved. My father cleared his throat. My mother reached for the cake knife. "What?" "It was just a joke," she said, as if the word joke could erase the sting. Sophie chimed in. "She's not actually upset, right?" I stayed silent. Sometimes words are like matches in the rain, useless. I just kept filming because I didn't know what else to do. A thin trail of smoke rose from one of the candles. Someone muttered, "Guess we're eating without her." I set my phone down and walked away from the table, my heels tapping against the tile, each step heavier than the last. I passed through the hallway, past the coat rack crammed with jackets, and stopped outside Clara's door. "Clara, it's me." Silence, then a muffled sniff. "Can I come in?" A pause. "Yeah." She was curled up on her bed, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to fold into nothing. The blue dress looked too big on her now, her shoulders hunched, her eyes red. "Am I actually fat?" she asked, her voice small but sharp enough to cut me open. I sat beside her, my hand resting gently on her arm. "No, you have a beautiful, healthy body. You don't need anyone's permission to exist in it." They all laughed, she whispered. "Because laughing is easier than standing up for someone. That doesn't make them right." Her lip trembled. "I'm not going back out there. You don't have to," I said softly. "This is your party. They're the ones who don't belong." She looked at me then, just for a moment, and I saw it. The same wound I'd carried since I was her age. I stood up, my mind suddenly very, very clear. I was going back out there, and when I did, not everyone was going to stay. I can still see Clara's face when she asked, "Am I actually fat?" The question that split my chest open like a seam. I told her she didn't owe anyone skinny, that her body didn't need a permission slip. She stayed tucked in the blue dress, breathing in careful counts, while I promised, "They're the ones who don't belong." That promise didn't come from nowhere. It was stitched together over weeks of ordinary love, the kind people don't clap for because it looks like errands. 3 weeks earlier, we were in a dressing room where the mirror had better lighting than most operating rooms. Clara stood on the little platform, the hem of the blue dress kissing her knees. I don't know," she said, tugging a strap. "Wide." "Like a thunderstorm right before it breaks," I said, charged. "Gorgeous." She tried not to smile. She failed a little. At the counter, I pretended to grimace at the price while sliding my card, bargaining silently with the future. Let this dress hold one happy memory. Just one. At home, we strung fairy lights that flashed warm as breathing. I wrestled the wrinkle-proof tablecloth that wrinkles on principle. Claire taped glitter letters crooked on the wall. "Happy 15, Clara." She stepped back, head tilted. "Is it too much for a first real party?" "Not enough," I said, and reached up to nudge the P better. We perfected the curls. She rejected pink nails for pearl. We practiced a smile in the bathroom mirror, the kind that doesn't show I'm trying too hard. She pressed a hand to her ribs. What if Ethan doesn't come? Then I eat his slice of cake, I said. Both slices. She laughed, a small snort that sounded 14 and brave. I picked up the cake the morning of the 3-tier showpiece from a bakery where the boxes wear fancier handwriting than most diplomas. I drove like I was transporting glass lungs. At home, I slid it onto the stand and took a step back. Claire rounded the corner and actually clapped. Mom, it's wow. Underline wow. I pretended to dust it with invisible sparkle. My phone buzzed. Mom, running late, don't start without us. Another, Sophie, Ryan wants extra pizza, he's bulking. I typed, plenty here, and swallowed the familiar, dull ache of accommodating without thanks. The first guests arrived with squeaky sneakers and nervous laughs. Ethan came later, tall in a hoodie he hadn't outgrown emotionally. He handed Clara a small box tied with silver string. She said, thanks, in a voice she didn't know she owned. He stared at the floor like it might offer subtitles. I was still smiling at them when my parents came in. My mother, Margaret, wore that perfume that could stun a bird mid-flight. Walter followed with the careful steps of a man allergic to conflict. Sophie breezed in behind them, sunglasses on at dusk because Sophie has a private son. Mom surveyed the room the way a judge surveys a defendant who dared show up in flats. Sweet, she said, eyes landing on Clara. That dress is ambitious. It's lovely, I said, brighter than I felt. We dimmed the lights for the cake. The kids sang too fast, tripping over the second happy birthday, dear Clara. I watched Clara glow with the exact happiness I'd paid for, prayed for, built from receipts and ribbon. Then my mother found a way to be louder than candles. Careful with that cake, sweetheart. If you eat too much, that dress might not fit next year. The laugh track unspooled. Not everyone, but enough. Ethan's small, terrified chuckle, the sound of a boy begging the floorboards to swallow him, cut me deeper than my mother's voice ever could. Clara's chair scraped. Door clicked. My phone was still recording a party that no longer existed. I went to her room. You know that part? The question. My answer. The promise. When I came back to the hallway, the party sounds had congealed music buzzing low, whispers moving like gnats. I stood there, feeling the old ghost of being 15 and wrong for taking up space. I let it pass through me and kept walking. In the kitchen, Sophie leaned on the island like a talk show guest. She's fine, she said, flipping her hair. Mom was joking. You laughed first, I said. She blinked. Everyone laughed. Not everyone. My mother sliced a sliver of cake with courtroom precision. Elaine, don't be dramatic. A little humor builds character. So does kindness, I said. Try that. Walter cleared his throat. He always clears his throat right before choosing the safest person in the room to disappoint. He picked me. Let's not make a scene. I'm not making a scene, I said. I'm making a boundary. From the dining room, a burst of teen laughter, bright, fragile, spilled, and faded. I pictured Clara, face pressed to a pillow that smelled like her shampoo, counting her breaths while strangers made decisions about her body. I picked up the cake knife, set it down, picked up the stack of plates, set them down. My hands wanted a job, my voice found one. Mom, Dad, Sophie, Ryan, thank you for coming. I met each pair of eyes. You can go now. Silence fell so fast the lights seemed to hum louder to fill it. Margaret laughed without humor. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious, I said, and realized I sounded calm because I was. You don't get to humiliate my daughter and then eat her cake. Sophie's mouth opened, closed. You're overreacting. Maybe, I said, and maybe I'm late. I nodded toward the door. No shouting, no theatrics. Just the truth standing upright for once. Ryan muttered, "This is lame," and grabbed his hoodie. Walter stared at the floorboards like they'd betrayed him. Margaret's lips thinned to a blade. "You'll regret this," she said. I almost smiled. Watch me. From the hallway, another sound rose, footsteps, quick and light, the flutter of a hinge. I turned, heart stuttering. Clara's bedroom door was opening. When Clara's bedroom door creaked open, every conversation in the house seemed to hold its breath. I just told my mother to leave. My sister was frozen mid-scowl, my father halfway to putting on his coat. Claire stepped into the hallway like she'd crossed some invisible line between safety and the battlefield. Her eyes swept the kitchen. She saw the half-cut cake, the stack of unused plates, and the cluster of relatives stiff with disbelief. But she didn't look at me, at least not right away. She looked at my mother. It wasn't a glare. It wasn't even defiance. It was something quieter, heavier. A sort of unspoken why? Margaret broke the stare first, reaching for her purse. "Come on, Walter," she said. "We're leaving." Sophie rolled her eyes at Ryan, who smirked like the whole scene was just entertainment. And then they were gone, shoes squeaking, door clicking shut. The kind of exit that doesn't slam, but still echoes. I waited until I heard the car pull away before turning to Clara. "You okay?" She shrugged, a small, defensive movement. "They're going to hate you now." "Probably," I said. "But they were never very good at liking me, so I'm not losing much." Her lips twitched like she almost smiled, then it fell away. "I still don't want to go back in there." "You don't have to," I said. "Not tonight. Not ever, if it means feeling like this." She followed me back into her room. The fairy lights we'd hung together glowed soft against the walls, wrapping the space in a gentler warmth than the rest of the house. She sat cross-legged on the bed, tugging at the hem of her dress like it was suddenly too short. I sat beside her, careful not to crowd. "Am I overreacting?" she asked. "To someone embarrassing you in front of everyone you know?" I shook my head. "No, you're reacting exactly right." She picked at an invisible thread on the comforter. "They didn't defend me, not even Ethan." "That's not about you," I said. "That's about them not having the spine to stand up when it matters." She took a deep breath, and for a moment, I thought she might cry again. But she didn't. Instead, she asked, "Did Grandma ever do that to you?" The question sliced through me. Memories unspooled my 12th birthday. A living room full of kids. My mother announcing to the crowd that my dress made me look like I was headed to a funeral. The laughter, my own included, until I could escape to the bathroom. That familiar mix of shame and performance. "Yes," I said finally. "More than once." Clara's shoulders relaxed just slightly, as if knowing she wasn't alone made the air a fraction lighter. "What did you do?" "I survived," I said. "And then I learned surviving isn't enough." She leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. "I don't want to survive this. I want to forget it happened." "You won't," I said, brushing a curl from her cheek. "But we can make sure it never happens again." I meant it in the simplest way when I said it. A private promise. But as I sat there listening to her breathing even out, another layer took shape. This wasn't just about shielding Clara from my mother's cruelty. It was about dismantling the scaffolding that had held that cruelty in place for decades. The unspoken agreements, the quiet tolerances, the just jokes that had shaped the way we all learned to take up less space. I realized, sitting in that room, that this was bigger than an awkward birthday moment. This was about who gets to decide our worth. The music from the living room was still playing, faint and hesitant, like it didn't know if it was allowed to be loud again. I thought about the guests, the uneaten cake, the unopened gifts. I thought about the phone in my pocket, heavy with unanswered messages, and the recording of my mother's words, proof that it wasn't just in Clara's head. Tomorrow I'd have to face all of it. The fallout, the accusations. The kind of guilt only family knows how to serve in oversized portions. But tonight I stayed in that room until she fell asleep. Only then did I slip out, close the door, and walk into the hallway where the quiet felt less like peace and more like a fuse waiting to burn. Because if I was right, the next spark wouldn't come from inside this house. It would come from theirs. By morning, the fuse I'd felt the night before had already started burning. My phone lit up with messages before the sun was fully up, my mother's name blinking like a warning light. "Margaret, you embarrassed us, in front of everyone." Over a harmless comment. "Sophie, Ryan says his friends think we're banned from your house. Are we, Walter? Call your mother. She's upset." I didn't answer, not yet. I moved quietly through the kitchen, making coffee, the hum of the machine almost drowning out the buzz of incoming guilt. Clara's door stayed shut. I let her sleep. Last night had carved enough out of her. Around 10 a.m., my parents showed up. They didn't knock. They never do. The door swung open and there was Margaret, coat belted tight, Walter trailing behind like an afterthought. Sophie appeared a few minutes later, Ryan in tow, looking bored. I stood in the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand. "You're early." "We came to clear the air," Margaret said, her voice clipped, like she was offering me a deal I should be grateful for. It was just a joke. I let the words hang there, heavy and familiar. "And what exactly are you clearing? Your conscience? Or the memory of what you said?" Sophie scoffed. "Oh, for God's sake, Elaine. You've been sensitive since we were kids." My fingers tightened around the mug. "This isn't about me, it's about Clara." "She get over it," Margaret said, waving a hand. "Kids bounce back. What she needs is thicker skin." "What she needs," I said, "is a family that doesn't think cruelty is a bonding activity." Walter shifted uncomfortably. "We didn't mean harm." "But you caused it," I said, my voice low and steady. "And now you're here because you think I'll smooth it over, like always." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "You're overreacting." There it was, the same line they'd used last night. The same line they'd used every time I'd tried to stand my ground. This time, I didn't let it land. "You want to know what overreacting looks like?" I set the mug down, my hands free now. Overreacting is what I should have done years ago when the first joke cut deep enough to scar. Overreacting would have been kicking you out of my life the first time you made me feel small. Instead, I let it slide, again and again. Sophie crossed her arms. "So what? You're just cutting us off? Over one party?" I took a slow breath. "Over a pattern. Over years of it. And over the fact that you humiliated my daughter in front of a room full of people and laughed about it." Ryan muttered something under his breath. Sophie shushed him. I looked at each of them in turn. "You're leaving, right now. And until you can understand why, don't come back." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin smile that wasn't a smile at all. "You'll regret this." "No," I said. "I'm finally done regretting that I didn't do it sooner." They left in a huff, shoes scuffing, muttered curses, the front door clicking shut. I stood there in the stillness afterward, the faint smell of my mother's perfume lingering like a warning. From the hallway, Clara's door opened just enough for her to peek out. "Are they gone?" "They are," I said. She stepped into the light, her hair tangled from sleep, but her eyes more awake than mine. "Good?" she whispered. I wanted to hug her. Instead, I said, "We're not going back to how things were." She nodded, almost relieved. "What happens now?" I didn't have an answer yet. But I knew whatever came next would start with this clean, deliberate absence where their presence used to be. And then my phone buzzed again, lighting up with a message that wasn't from my family at all. It was from someone who'd been at the party. Someone who'd seen everything. And what they had to say made my stomach drop. The message was from Leila, one of the other moms who had stayed at the party to help corral the kids. "Elaine, I just wanted to say I saw what happened. You did the right thing, but you should know, a few people left early and were saying you ruined the night. Your mother told them Clara is too sensitive and that you've always been dramatic." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. It wasn't surprising. Margaret never missed a chance to rewrite the story, but it still landed like a pebble in my chest, the kind that feels small until it settles and starts to ache. By noon, the messages from my family had multiplied. "Margaret, you embarrassed us in front of strangers." "Who does that to their own mother?" "Walter. She's hurt." "Fix this." "Sophie, Ryan's upset. People are talking." "You've made this bigger than it is." I deleted them without replying. My coffee had gone cold again. Clara emerged around lunchtime, wrapped in her blanket like armor. "I don't want to go to school tomorrow," she said. "You don't have to decide that yet," I told her. "We'll figure it out tonight." She sat at the table, picking at a piece of toast. "They'll tell everyone they might," I admitted. "And if they do, that's on them, not you." She nodded but didn't look convinced. After she went back to her room, I opened my banking app. The decision came like a flick of a switch clean, almost satisfying. For years, I'd been paying part of my parents' mortgage. covering their utilities when they forgot, footing the bill for Sophie's emergencies that somehow always involve spa days or designer bags. My mother's boutique survived on the supplies I got her at cost, delivered overnight. None of it had ever been enough to buy their kindness. I scrolled through my scheduled payments. Mortgage contribution, cancel. Walter's blood pressure meds, cancel. Shop supply account, full price, net 30 terms, no exceptions. Sophie's personal transfer line, delete. The numbers shifted on the screen, my budget suddenly roomier, lighter. And with it came a strange stillness in my chest, not joy. Not relief, just space. By mid-afternoon, Margaret called. I didn't answer. The voicemail was sharp, every syllable clipped. Elaine, I know you canceled the payment. This is childish. We're family. You don't just cut family off. Her definition of family had always been flexible, bending around whatever benefited her. Sophie texted 10 minutes later. Mom says the bank called. Kevin's summer camp deposit is due. You're really going to let him miss it? I typed, yes, then erased it. Instead, I said nothing at all. That evening, Clara joined me on the couch. We watched something light, nothing important. She leaned against me, quiet but present. It felt like a tiny victory. My phone buzzed again at a message, but not from family this time. It was from an unknown number. I saw what your mother said to Clara. You should also know. This isn't the first time she's done something like that. Ask Sophie about her wedding rehearsal dinner. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I didn't need to ask, I remembered that night all too well. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't just going to be about last night's party. It was going to be about every time she'd done this. And about ending it completely. The retaliation didn't start with shouting. It started with silence, the kind that hums like a power line before the storm. 2 days after I cut them off, Margaret stopped texting altogether. No daily reminders about little things she needed, no sly comments about Clara. Then Sophie appeared at my front door. She didn't knock, she rang the bell twice and then pounded. When I opened it, she was already talking. You've really done it this time. Mom can't sleep. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. Ryan's camp is in jeopardy. And you, she jabbed a finger at me, are sitting here like none of it matters. I stepped aside just enough so she couldn't see Clara in the living room. Sophie, I'm not going to discuss this with you. You laughed at her. She rolled her eyes. It was awkward. Everyone laughed. You can't crucify us for not knowing what to do in the moment. I'm not crucifying anyone, I said. I'm setting a boundary. There's a difference. She scoffed, muttered something about me, always thinking I'm better than the rest of us, and left. The next day, Clara came home from school with her backpack half-zipped and her face pale. She didn't even take her shoes off before speaking. They came to school, she said. My stomach dropped. Who? Grandma and Aunt Sophie. They told the front office they wanted to apologize. The secretary let them sign in. But it wasn't an apology. Her voice wavered, but she pushed on. They said you overreacted, that you always do. That you ruined the family. And they said it was my fault because I ran off like a baby and made you angry. I gripped the edge of the counter to keep my hands still. They told you this? She nodded. They also said you're selfish and unstable. That if I don't talk to you and get you to be reasonable, Grandpa and Grandma will lose their house. And if that happens, it'll be on me. I crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled her into my arms. Her shoulders were rigid, her breath quick. Clara, that's not true. None of it. They made it sound so real, she whispered. What if they lose the house? Then it's because 2 grown adults built their lives on expecting someone else to save them, I said. Not because of you, and not because of me. She looked up, eyes wet. They told me if I couldn't convince you, I'd have to live with that guilt forever. They couldn't break me, so they came for you, I said, my voice colder than I intended. They thought you'd be easier to push, but they were wrong. Her lip trembled. What are you going to do? I held her gaze. I'm going to make sure they never get another chance. And right then, I knew my next step wouldn't be a conversation. It would be a severing final, and without loopholes. But I also knew that when I did it, they'd come back harder, and I had to be ready for that. I didn't wait. That same night, after Clara had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone and typed one message addressed to Margaret, Walter, and Sophie all at once. You approached my daughter at school. You tried to guilt her into thinking she's responsible for your life. This is over. No contact, no visits. No explanations, we're done. I hit send before I could soften it. No emojis, no opening for a reply, just a closed door. The responses came fast, pinging like hail on a tin roof. Margaret, she misunderstood. We just wanted to talk. Please, let's discuss this like family. Walter, so now you want your mother in the ground after everything she's done for you? Sophie, you've gone insane. You're destroying everything. I turned my phone face down. The kitchen felt too still, too aware. I rinsed my mug, dried it, and went to bed. Over the next few weeks, the ripples hit. Margaret texted to say the bank had given them 30 days to make a payment or foreclosure proceedings would start. I didn't answer. Sophie sent me a photo of Ryan holding a broken laptop, captioned, "How do you sleep at night?" I deleted it. Walter left a voicemail heavy with sighs. We're your parents, Elaine. You can't just turn your back. But I could, and I had. By the second month, the boutique Margaret ran was falling apart. Word got back to me through a mutual acquaintance, orders delayed. Shelves half-stocked, her signature gift wrap gone because I wasn't supplying it anymore. She'd posted on Facebook, "All good things must come to an end. Thank you to everyone who supported us. Due to family circumstances, we are closing." Family circumstances, the words made my jaw tighten. Ryan didn't go to camp that summer. Sophie sent a letter, not an email, an actual letter accusing me of punishing a child. He's just a kid. You've taken his joy away because you're angry with us. She didn't mention the night he'd smirked while Clara ran from her own birthday table. It wasn't joy I'd taken from them. It was access. One evening, Clara and I sat by the window as the sun slipped down, orange leaking into violet. She was sketching something in her notebook, a soft smile on her face. I realized it had been weeks since she'd asked if I'd spoken to Grandma. Weeks since she'd looked over her shoulder at the sound of the doorbell. The absence was working. The silence was healing. Still, I knew them. Margaret wasn't done. Sophie wasn't done. People like that don't just fade into the background, they circle, waiting for an opening. And one day they'd find one. The only question was how far they'd go when they did. It came quietly, almost like they'd finally accepted it. No calls, no letters, no surprise visits. Weeks slid into months, and for the first time in years, my phone wasn't a revolving door for demands dressed up as family news. Clara began to unfurl in ways I hadn't realized she'd been holding back. She joined the art club at school, started wearing her hair the way she liked instead of the way she thought would look better in photos, and even invited Ethan over to watch movies one Saturday. I caught them laughing in the living room, and it wasn't the brittle, perform for company kind. It was the loose, real kind that doesn't glance over its shoulder for judgment. One Friday afternoon, I drove us to a cabin by the lake. No Wi-Fi, no TV, just the sound of water folding over itself on the shore and the occasional call of a loon in the distance. We spent the first evening reading by the fireplace, the soft crackle filling the spaces where old tension used to live. On the second night, Clara and I sat on the porch with mugs of tea, the air cool enough to make the steam curl. The lake was dark glass, holding the reflection of the moon like a coin you could almost pick up. She broke the quiet. "Mom, do you ever feel guilty?" I set my mug on the rail. "Yes, but not for what you think. I regret letting them speak to me for so long like I owed them something. I regret that you had to see what they're really like. And I regret not ending it sooner." She watched the ripples push across the water. "They'll never come near me again, right?" "Never," I said. "And you are not the one who caused all of this." She looked at me for a long moment, as if testing the weight of my words. "You really mean that?" I reached for her hand. "Their choices, their consequences, your life, that's yours. And I'm right here, always." Her shoulders eased. The tightness I'd seen for months melted into a small, genuine smile. Not the cautious one she'd worn at the party, not the forced one she used at school. This one was unguarded, lit from somewhere deep. We sat there until the tea went cold, listening to the night breathe around us. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the next jab, the next just a joke, the next guilt-laced demand. The absence wasn't empty. It was space we could fill with our own lives. Still, as I watched her eyes drift toward the horizon, a thought crept in, quiet but persistent. Peace is fragile, and people who feed on control rarely starve quietly. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, please like, share, and feel free to tell us your own story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Help us grow as a storytelling community and be part of this journey with us. Can I count on you? Thank you so much.